Thank you so much, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. If I'm a little nervous, it's because it's been a while since I've spoken to such a large audience. I'm used to speaking to smaller crowds these days. St. Augustine once famously said in his Confessions that as a younger man, he used to pray, "Make me pure, O Lord, but not quite yet." And I think we can all identify with that particular prayer because it speaks to the difficulty that we have, not in accepting the diagnosis of the problems that we face, but in accepting the fact that in order to deal with the illnesses of our time, we need to recognize the need for change. And as we all know, change is difficult. It's difficult for us as human beings because we are people of habits and because bad habits have a way of becoming a way of life. It's difficult because not only as individuals do we find change difficult and challenging in our own lives, but also because the institutions that we have created over many, many centuries have themselves become institutions that are difficult to change. And sometimes the difficulties make us turn to cynicism, or to inaction, or to passivity, or to saying, well, I can't do very much about this, so I'm not even going to try. What I think is wonderful about the movement that has been created by the Parliament is that it provides us with an opportunity to reflect and to remind ourselves of certain basic things that we need to understand and that in fact require us to change. It's not that change is an option. It's that change is the only option. And here I echo other speakers. We can see, I think, in the world today, we can speak of many challenges, but let me speak principally of four. The first is, as Larry has said, and let me pay tribute to Larry's extraordinary dedication and leadership in bringing us to a point. He has given us thanks. Let us give him and to his team the thanks that he so richly deserves. The first is that we have the capacity, and we've had it since 1945, since those days in August, when we realized that we have the capacity to destroy each other. We have the capacity to kill each other at a rate and at a level that exceeds anything imaginable in our time. And it is indeed an irony when we talk about human progress through the centuries. The 20th century was the most violent and destructive century in history. And so we need to understand that dealing with the scourge of war, which is the phrase used in the United Nations, is a phrase we have to remind ourselves. There is always a risk of almost total destruction. But it goes beyond that, which leads me to my second point. It's not just that we have the capacity to kill each other in ways that were previously unimaginable, but that we are living in what the scientists now call the age of the Anthropocene, which means it is an age in which it is human beings ourselves who are showing an incredible capacity to destroy the planet by the way in which we produce things and make things, and fail to deal with pollution, and fail to deal with the consequences of the mess that we're making. We cannot just speak of social justice between people. We need to understand that we are creatures of this earth. And we need to turn to, in our case in Canada, we speak of those who have been here for thousands of years. We need to speak to indigenous traditions around the world which teach us that we plan, and when we think of things we're going to do, it is not simply what we do in our time, it is what we do for future generations. We've learned, and Larry spoke in terms which might have caused some alarm in some areas when he talked about unbridled free market capitalism. But one of the tragedies of that capitalism is that it has created what we call a tragedy of the commons, which is that we have lost our way in understanding what we need to do to take care of the commonplaces in our world, what we need to do to take care of the public interest and the public good, and how we have to find a politics, yes, a politics that is a politics that emphasizes the importance of the things we have in common, our shared humanity, our shared goals, our shared prosperity, yes, prosperity that is shared, but also to understand the need to develop a politics for the public good. But we are reminded that there is not only a tragedy of the commons, there is what we now know is a tragedy of the horizon. And that is that we are failing to recognize that the earth that we have inherited from the past, and the earth that we are passing on to future generations. And if in the way we conduct ourselves, we fail to plan for that horizon, then we ourselves are contributing to the destruction of the earth itself. So sustainability has to be built into every economic and political decision that we make. It has to be built into every way in which we conduct ourselves, and we have to resist those people who say there is no such thing as climate change. And remind ourselves of the words of Galileo when he was told by the authorities of the time that he was not allowed to assert certain scientific facts. And he said, and yet, it moves. There is a science. There are facts. There are things that are true and there are things that are untrue. And it is incumbent upon us, as we assert the importance of faith, to also understand that we are asserting the importance of science itself and the world of facts. Since the middle of the 19th century, longer than that, since many years before, but certainly when Darwin came along, there was this so-called struggle between faith and science. There is no struggle between faith and science, because there are questions that science cannot answer. And we have to recognize that there are also things that faith cannot necessarily answer on its own. It requires not just faith, but works, the things that we do. So as we look forward to dealing with these challenges, challenge of prosperity, the challenge of sharing that prosperity, the challenge of understanding the key role that sustainability plays in all of our lives, I want to speak of the final challenge. And that challenge is hate. We speak often of the inclusion of love. We speak of the importance of listening to other voices, of recognizing that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, perhaps for a reason. And that is that listening is even more important than talking. We need to understand how destructive and terrible the power of hate is, and we also need to understand that tragically, religion has given rise to as much hate as it has given to love. And so it is within each of our own faiths that we have to, yes, fight. We have to challenge those who would make of our faith an instrument not of love, but an instrument of hate and destruction. Because when we look at the conflicts around the world, we have to understand and appreciate that what they all have in common is hatred. Hatred of the other. Hatred of those who are different than us, who speak differently, who look differently, and who practice their faiths differently. So we have work to do, my friends. There is an agenda that is waiting to be accomplished and that requires change. And change requires leadership. And leadership needs to come from all of us. I want to just close with words that were spoken at the end of his life by a famous Canadian Prime Minister. Wilfrid Laurier was on his last legs as he was speaking to a group of younger people when he said these words: "Never forget that faith is stronger than doubt and love is stronger than hate. And let us remember those words as we go forward, not simply in a peroration of good feeling, but go forward with an agenda for change, an agenda for action." And thank you very much for allowing me to join you today. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.